Remarkable. Peter, you've written a great story, front page of the New York Times, talking about Donald Trump's age.
Yeah.
And how things have changed so quickly. It was Joe Biden a couple of months ago. All the questions about Biden's age.
Joe, that was so June.
That was so June. Let me just say, the last debate feels like it was like in 1947. It was so long ago.
Right.
But as the debate looms, you're right, Trump is now the one facing questions about his age and capacity.
Yeah, no, the politics have turned on their head, of course. He is now the oldest person on stage, and he won't have Joe Biden's issues to distract from your point of view of his own, right? So if a lot of people would have said on June 27th, he didn't necessarily present very well, but because Biden had such a hard time, formulating his thoughts and looked blank at times, it distracted from a critical examination of Trump's capacity. Well, that's not going to happen now, obviously. Kamala Harris is 59. He is now 78. He will be the oldest president in history if he wins and serves out his term.
Right.
And we've seen through that child care answer and other statements in recent weeks and months that he can go off on these bizarre tangents, hard to understand statements.
Well, not only that, Peter, when he goes out, and he's not campaigning a lot now.
Yeah.
But when he was, while Joe Biden was still in the race, he confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi. He confused World War II with World War III.
Right.
He kept thinking that he had beaten Barack Obama.
Yes.
He kept thinking he was running against Barack Obama. He was, and again, I'm not judging. I mean, when I'm 78 and I'm standing up on stage with that sort of pressure, perhaps I would do it. We would all do it. But he definitely was looking addled.
Yes.
And I just wonder, are you getting any reporting that that's why they're keeping him off the campaign trail?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, right? Now, look, he is different than Joe Biden in the sense that he projects more energy and he projects more volume, and that covers, I think, for some of the, mangled verbiage and unfinished thoughts at times. Although if you play the full answers to some of these questions, like with the child care thing, it comes through. Now, I mean, in journalism, there's kind of a structural thing where we look for the quote that seems to make sense.
Right.
And we write a story or we put a clip on air, and we don't tend to play them at length the way we probably ought to more often. Because when you do see that, and we'll see it tonight perhaps, you understand that he isn't completing a sentence, he isn't completing a thought, and however loud he may be, people are questioning his ability to answer the questions.
Okay, in a moment, we're going to speak with the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. But first, joining us now is the host of the podcast On Brand with Donny Deutsch. Donny Deutsch, and the co-founder and CEO of All In Together and host of Majority Rules on Two-Way, Lauren Leader, and professor of history at Tulane University. The great Walter Isaacson is with us at the table as well. Jonathan Lemire is here, too. And, Jonathan, just before we break it out to the group here, one more thing on the structure of the debate. I think there's a tendency on hosts and producers to have, their topics. And we're going to do foreign policy, and we're going to do domestic policy. And then he doesn't answer the questions, and they have to move on to the next topic. Why? Why do you have to move on to the next topic? If you haven't gotten an answer as to whether or not 2020 was a fair election or whatever else about a post that he's put out there, why not stay on the question until you get an answer? Who would have a problem with that?
And that can be a question as simple as who won the 2020 election. It can be talking to Donald Trump about his threats over the weekend about
the CNN town hall. I would have never left that question.
Yeah. Right.
I would have never let that question go by and continued with the town hall.
One thing of note is CNN, before the Atlanta debate, made clear. They said, we're not in the business of fact-checking, a decision that was greeted with some criticism from a lot of quarters. ABC has not said that. ABC and their political director has said, hey, we will do some. We can't bog down and fact-check everything that either candidate says, but we're going to do some. So Donny, so that's a step in the right direction. So Donny, it is a big moment tonight. It is undeniable. This might be the only time these two share a stage. It's unclear if there'll be another debate. I think for the vice president, she does present such a contrast. It's a very different scene than what we saw in Atlanta at the end of June. That's also an opportunity for her. We saw some polling over the weekend that suggests that Americans, even those who like her, they just want to know a little more about her. Who is she? What does she stand for? This feels like an opportunity not only to explain herself, but to grow her support.
So I just want to pick up on a point you guys were talking about. Message to the moderators: start with one question. Mr. Trump, did you or did you not lose the 2020 election? That's the existential question. That's if we go on the premise that the most important thing is democracy on the line or is it not on the line? That's the tell. And Mika, to your point, you stay on it. The thing that she has to do is what I call pivot contrast phrases. Basically, take a lesson from what you guys played earlier in the show, the old Reagan thing. There you go again. Brand him with a pivot statement each time. Mr. Trump, you've said that 1,000 times before. Mr. Trump or President Trump, that's a lie again. Or Mr. Trump, that's yesterday's news. Continually each time, brand him as yesterday. Brand him as a liar. Brand him as old news before you answer the question. That will get under his skin. The other thing she has to do, she has to look like a commander-in-chief. That's really important. People are seeing it for the first time, which brings up another issue. You guys talked about this earlier in the show, the woman issue, a woman in power. And it's unfortunate that she still has to do that dance, but she does. But do the pivot phrases, be in command, get under his skin. But moderators, please start with the question, who won the election?
Joe.
Donald, you've been lying for a decade now. The same lies. It's time to move on. That sort of pivot. Hey, Walter, let's just step back and tell me, looking back at presidential debates, what one or two have stuck out in your mind as actually having an impact on the election?
I think what really matters, both in a debate and a campaign, is to come across as I'm the person who cares about people like yourself. And I think that Reagan, who had a very strong ideology, was able to capture that. And he was able to capture a sort of sagebrush populism that meant I'm not for the elites, even though it was, as a lot of what Reagan did, an act. I think now you're seeing populism, not just in the United States, but around the world. And we have a history of populism both on the left and the right, ever since Andrew Jackson or maybe Shays' Rebellion. And the question is whether Harris can say, I care about people like you, I'm fighting for you against the banks or whatever, big corporations, but also not make it fully ideological. And I think that that's what Reagan was able to do at some point in the debate, and that's even what Bill Clinton was able to do.
Yeah, Shays' Rebellion. Somewhere a bell just rang for John Meacham. He woke up from his slumber. He's going to start telling Keith about Shays' Rebellion. Exactly. Let's bring it right now. Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. Jamie, what are the keys tonight?
Well, listen, it's interesting listening to your conversation about Trump, because just because you're loud and crazy doesn't mean you're lucid and competent, right? This is a guy who is unhinged. I mean, who could talk about the price of bacon and wind energy in one sentence, who could talk about sharks and electric motors. I mean, this guy is not
Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, he's not all there, and we need to start treating him like he's not all there, and that's dangerous to this nation. You know, I think this debate tonight is really going to be a stark contrast for the American people. It's about the future versus the past. It's about truth versus lies. It's about hope versus fear, but ultimately, it's about progress versus chaos. And I think the vice president is going to stand on that stage tonight and be presidential. And when she does that, we are going to ride into this November election, because then that will answer the question that so many people who don't know her have about whether or not she can handle the job. Because if she can handle Donald Trump tonight, she can handle Vladimir Putin and any other dictator or wannabe dictator that's out there.